Hi, everybody. So, I've been thinking about doing this for a little while, and what I've been thinking about doing is going through the different mechanical things that I've ended up having to learn over the years and just sort of going through them one by one. Now, I know there's a lot of different videos for explaining how to do different bicycle repair and maintenance items out there, but a lot of them don't have sort of everything that you want to hear about on one go. And a lot of bicycle touring sort of issues end up being related to worries about mechanical competence or being scared about if something happens, what you can do about it. And really, in the scheme of things, being able to um, sort of feel empowered and like strengthened to be able to try something and just do things is really important. And so, in light of that, I'm going to do this first video talking about how to clean and lubricate your chain. So, depending on who you talk to and which audience you sort of have, some people say, oh, you need to lubricate your chain every 2 weeks or after every time it rains or gets wet or after every 100 miles. And then beyond that, you can sort of go off of, well, do you feel it resisting? Do you feel like your chain's fighting you? Does it squeak? And you can sort of hear this fighting a little bit right now. If I backpedal, that's not just shifting issues right there. That's the sound of, a chain that's fighting a bit. So as many mechanics are, I've been lazy about going over this. And so I'm going to first give the chain a clean, and then I'll show you a couple ways I do that. And then I'll show you how to lubricate. Real straightforward. So, great tool to be able to have for cleaning your chain is saving old kitchen sponges or old bathroom sponges. This is my old one, and it doesn't really want to soak up moisture anymore. And this is after running it over underwater for a few minutes, still stiff. And, it's all black and covered with grease already anyway. And this kitchen sponge, I can tell, is about to want to be retired. It's starting to fall apart a little bit. A little rough for kitchen use, but will work just fine for bike. So if you're being really finicky, and another option you can have is using something like this, old kitchen towels that start, having holes in them where they get dirty and you don't really want to use anymore. It's a great alternative to having to buy something new, and these last well. As you can tell, since this isn't greasy enough yet for me to really feel like I should get rid of it yet, or I don't have enough new cleaner ones to justify getting rid of this yet. So I'm going to start off with this guy, and sort of the trick is to wrap all the way around the chain, sort of with this kind of motion, all the way around the chain, and backpedal about 10 times through. And this way I get both sides of the plates and I get the rollers on both sides. And you can see a fair amount of stuff's already coming off. And you know what? I want to sort of give it a harder hold and run it backwards some more. Now, something that you'll end up having happen a lot when you do this is that you'll do something like that and you'll accidentally pull the chain a little bit sideways and shift it out of the chain ring that you're currently shifted for. It's perfectly natural to have happen. It's something you gain experience for to not have happen to you. And so, like let's say I dumped it off all the way into another chain ring. Well, then all I have to do is just lift it back up and put it back on. Since I'm not pedaling down a road, it's not a big problem for dealing with. And backpedaling is a lot easier to make this work because if you forward pedal, you have to worry about the spokes starting to hit your knuckles, as you probably heard a second ago there. So I've wiped off a fair bit here. And in so I like lubricants like there we go, like this rock and roll sort of combo lube. So not wet, not dry. It works well for long distances. I've used this for a couple years. I haven't experimented with a whole bunch of different ones, so I couldn't tell you performance specs, but I like this. But essentially, any high viscosity lubricant, like something that looks like water, like that, is going to be a good choice. Do not use WD-40 because WD-40 will dry out your chain or any other parts that you put it onto. It will not provide long-term lubrication. So what I was just doing here was, let's see if I can make sure I see. So I was just moving the chain. There it is. Hard to spot from the side. I was just moving the chain so that I could line up with the master link for where I start this. I'm just going to reverse the camera angle. Nope, don't think I can do that while I'm filming. But I essentially line it up with the master link, and you put it on the side of the rollers that goes towards the gears. And the reason for that is that if you put the lubricant on the outside, then it's going to face all the outside world, all the road gunk and asphalt and tar and whatnot that flies up naturally is going to land right on that lubricant and stick to it and make your chain dirtier and gunkier and spread all that nonsense around everywhere else a lot quicker. So, just going to backpedal through, and I put a little bit of pressure on here, but since I'm letting the tip of the lubricant, make sure you can see, sort of slide along here, I don't really have to worry about too much pressure being put on here. And now that I've put on a layer across the whole right, I backpedal a little bit so that I can get some, so I can help it work its way in. And then I let it soak for a moment. Let's see if I can move this even closer. Things fighting. Do 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 do. So, since I used the sponge on one for the first run, I'll just use this guy for the second for demonstration. And so, you just do the same thing, wrap around, and backpedal. And this lubricant, the way it's supposed to be applied, it's essentially you're supposed to wipe off all of the excess lube. Let's see if I can get that right there. Come on, get the focus right. It says all of it. So that's what you do here. And the lubricant helps sort of liberate some of the crap that's been building up on here anyway. And so you might as well just take the chance to wipe off that the new stuff, that build up while you're here. I'm going to quickly grab a chain wear checker. So when you're doing chain wear, well, when you're doing chain lubing, especially if you put it up on the stand and you're being very formal and very finicky about everything, you might as well use a chain wear checking tool. Now, this has two sides. One says 1.0, the other says 0.75. That's 0.75. So that's percentage, essentially. So it's 100% worn or 75% worn. And the way you use this is you slip this end, this curve right here, into the end of one chain, set of links, and then you slide the other end over here, and if it slides in easily, then, so if it slides in easily on the 0.75 side, that means you are at least 75% worn, and that slides in easily, so at least 75% worn, and it slides in all the way on the one, it means I'm 100% worn. Now, depending on who you talk to and depending on what your sort of circumstances are, your mileage may vary. But from my experience as a touring cyclist and with systems that have less fine-tuned, finicky kind of needs to them, you don't really need to. So let me backtrack. If you catch the chain before it gets to 75% worn, essentially, then you're just supposed to replace the chain. If you only get it at 100%, then you're supposed to replace cassette, depending on who you talk to, chain rings, and the chain. In my experience, essentially you keep track of what your cassette looks like over time. And if you don't have shark tooth look to it, then the cassette is doing fine. And you don't need to spend that extra $60 on that at that point. Like if you go to touring cyclist pages, they'll brag about how they've gotten 15,000 more or more miles off of a single cassette, or that they've made like a chain last 5,000 miles. This chain's probably had 3, maybe. I haven't been keeping track very well, but it's about probably that number that I've had on this. And you know, now it seems like, okay, probably should replace it at some point soon. But it stretched for quite a while. It's a joke. Chain stretch is how you describe wear. And yeah, so for this first video on how to, I say a lot of little tips and stuff on chain lubing, and next one will be on cleaning some of these drivetrain pieces, because looking at it, it's winter and a lot of this stuff is dirty. So you can expect that next. Thanks.